Assalamulaikum everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Project Manchala. Very first time, my name is Mohammed Abbas Merchant. This is my podcast where I discuss basically whatever I want. And today I have someone I really look up to in the photography industry and also as a role model in this field, Mushahid Hussain. He is someone who I've been following for I suppose, about a year or so. And today I have the honor of having him on my podcast. So, as far as introductions go, I think I'm going to kick it over to him so he can properly introduce himself because I don't think there's anything I can say that would do him justice. But Mushahid, thank you so much for coming on today. If you could please introduce yourself for our audience.
Thank you. Hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Dr. Mushahid. I am a 25-year-old doctor based in Karachi, actually, but I've been doing hobbyist photography for the past 2.5 years now, and that's about it. So I'm a doctor who's also a photographer, and besides that, I build computers as well, but that's another kind of a thing. So, yeah.
So, to the best of my knowledge, you graduated recently, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I graduated in 2019. So, and I did my house job last year.
Right. So, where were you studying?
So I did my MBBS from Barry University, Medical Dental College, and I did my house job from Arfan.
Right. So, Prashant, you've picked like two of the most work heavy and like sorts of jobs together. And what was the idea behind that? Like you picking the medicine and then you're also doing photography as well. So what was the idea behind that?
अच्छा, so medicine तो एक चीज थी जो एक तरह से like became a career option for me. When I was a huge fan, like I really wanted to be an engineer. But जब sixth class में आया तो पता चला अब अगर maths नहीं आती तो engineering का तो option बन. I was really good at biology, and अब obviously मेरी background भी डॉक्टरों का है, तो एक वो सेंस चल रही होती है कि डॉक्टर ही बनना है. So I just went with it and I like became a doctor. But photography का जहाँ तक बात है तो एक तो मुझे बचपन में शौक था. Like when I was like 7 or 8, I used to video camera, which is Sony के camcorders एक जमाने में
Yeah,
आते थे
yeah.
कैसेट वाले. उस समय randomly इतनी random चीजें record करता था, but खैर वो शौक था. अब जब MBBS स्टार्ट किया 5 साल MBBS के थे, नई यूनिवर्सिटी में कुछ करने को था नहीं, तो I always wanted to like pick up a DSLR and actually give it a shot. And so I did. I bought उस जमाने में 700D खरीदा था कैनन का. उसके साथ 50mm जो आता है ना पैनकेक लेंस, वो लिया. अब शुरू में अब किसी बंदे के पास अगर यूनिवर्सिटी में कैमरा होता है तो उसका काम से यही रह जाता है कि वो लोगों की बर्थडे पार्टीज पे पिक्चर्स ले. तो ये मेरे कारनामे थे पहले कुछ 3-4 साल. तो in the end of fourth year, like my friends told me, okay, why not just make a page and start doing it like professionally or something. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, it will be nice to earn money on the sides, and I'm like sort of good at it, so why not? तो मैंने पेज बनाया तो स्टार्टिंग में थोड़े ये था कि मैं रैंडम चीज़ों की पिक्चर्स डाला था. देन आई गॉट अ फ्यू मॉडल्स. तो फिर मैंने जब पोर्ट्रेट शूट्स किए, people actually like them, and that's how it just kept going on. तो इवेंट्स लेने मैंने शुरू कर दिया और फिर जब से चल ही रहा है. So yeah.
So I mean, it kind of sounds like something out of a movie के यार बस एक दिन ऐसे शुरू कर दिया मजे में चल रहा है. अब मतलब डॉक्टर भी बन गए, फोटोग्राफर भी नहीं बन रहे मतलब.
यही है. Obviously, for example, अभी मैंने house job अपना finish किया है, so I have time right now. Before I start my residency. Residency is like what do you call post-graduation. So it's like 5 years of further specialized training. But in order to start residency, you have to do an exam first. Then you have to get selected into a hospital. Then the entire thing starts. And that's roughly going to take like till it's going to happen till later this year or next year. So I do have a lot of free times on my hand, which I can invest in photography. But last year, for example, when I was doing my house job at Arkan is one of the toughest place to work in. they absolutely like drain every single ounce of work out of you.
Okay.
So at that time, I really couldn't like at the moment even to do photography, I could turn down so many projects just because I either was very busy that day or I had a call. The call is basically a 36-hour duty or in the hospital and you come back the next day. So you can't actually do anything during that time. So last year photography almost died for me. This year it's back, but I don't know what's going to be the case next year and so forth. I do plan to keep this going, but it's always going to remain like a side kind of a thing, not a main.
So, I mean, as a doctor right now and as a recent graduate, so how has COVID basically impacted you? Because, I mean, as a doctor now, you're supposed to be a frontline worker, right? So, how does that
Mhm.
work?
All right, so I had graduated before the entire COVID crisis started, so I was working in Arakan when it happened. Uh, the first suspected case we got was in February 2020.
Hmm.
Okay, so back then, not a lot of people knew about COVID. We were just seeing stories from Wuhan. And all of a sudden, there's a patient here who's suspected of COVID. Now, no one has any idea. Uh, Being the junior most, like working in the hospital, you get put up front in
Hmm.
matters like these by your seniors. And like I was told to go and examine this patient. Uh, that kind of really scared me and my fellow colleague. She was also with me during this time. And back then, there wasn't such emphasis on personal protective equipments as well. So we took whatever we had and we went to the patient. And that was a very scary experience. That was my first encounter back in February. After that, things started getting real in March. In March, I was working in the emergency department, Arakan. All of a sudden, we find out that the government has imposed a lockdown. Now, for the first time ever, Arakan shut down. The entire emergency department has been cleared. It was absolutely a ghost town for 24 hours. And that was really, really shocking for all of us. And that's how it just proceeded. Our duties got shortened. Instead of us coming to work every day, we were coming every third or fourth day. Now, basically, house job and residency, they're both training programs.
Yep.
So when you're coming lesser, you're getting lesser training and your education is being affected. But that was the only way forward. So we missed out on a lot of things that we could have learned otherwise normally. We missed out on a lot of patience. Secondly, a lot of us, luckily I did not face this circumstance, but a lot of us were actually pulled out of their subspecialization and made to look
Mhm.
after COVID patients,
Okay.
uh, which was kind of impacting their learning because they were interested in a particular subspecialization and now they can't do it anymore. And now they're
Mhm.
just looking at COVID patients without any extra pay, without any extra benefit,
Achha, so you
with
guys weren't
even
even getting paid for that?
no, nothing extra, just our
Oh,
usual.
wow.
There was never any extra pay. Actually, the working hours became worse. We started getting less leaves. But the great thing about our as compared to other places was that they took seriously when one of their doctors isn't feeling well. They created an entire system where you could just use an app and you can mention your symptoms on it and you're tested for free and the management is already covered in our like salary. But there wasn't any extra pay, there wasn't any extra leaves or anything. We were just doing what we had to do at the time. And that's how it remained till August and like most of till August. Things started getting better then afterwards, but people were still being pulled out of the rotations and made to look after COVID patients. And so that was that. And then towards December, it started became completely fine. And now it's happening all over again for the newer batch. Still lucky that I at least finished my university for current medical students right now. Because medicine is a very hands-on field. You can't learn it from online lectures, and you can't like really learn it without being in a hospital
Mhm.
And right now, the most of them are sitting at home. And for some, I really feel bad because they're paying upwards north of 20 lakh per month or 25
Yep.
lakh rupees per month only to stay at home, which is quite absurd and quite saddening at the same time. So I do think that the medical field has been quite compromised by the COVID scenario. I mean, like if you just look at it in the last year or so, there hasn't been any health reforms.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Hospitals haven't hired extra people for it. Khan did hire extra people for it, but I mean, they were never like made to work because of the case कम होने लग गए थे. और बाकी हॉस्पिटल्स ने किसी को एक्स्ट्रा हायर नहीं किया, किसी की पे नहीं बढ़ाई, ना नर्सेस की, ना डॉक्टर्स की, ना पैरामेडिकल स्टाफ की. लीव से लोगों को वापस बुलाया, उनकी सब स्पेशलाइजेशन को पुल आउट किया, उनकी ट्रेनिंग अफेक्ट की. बट पूरे पिछले साल में नो वन हैज रियली एवर टॉक्ड अबाउट इट एंड हाउ इट हैज बीन इम्पैक्टिंग ऑल ऑफ अस. यहाँ तक कि खान ने तो हमारा हाउस जॉब 3 महीने एक्सटेंड कर दिया था. हाउस जॉब से 12 महीने का होता है, यहाँ पे लोगों ने 15 महीने का हाउस जॉब किया. और बहुत सारी जगहों पे ऐसा हुआ है, which wasn't right. I mean, you can't force people to work extra, but it happened and it happened. I can understand that the institute had no other choice as well because new graduates weren't coming in. एग्जाम सारे डिले हो गए थे, अब नए डॉक्टर भी नहीं है, पुराने डॉक्टरों का टाइम खत्म हो गया, तो अब क्या किया जाए. So I mean that was a necessary thing to be done, but like during this entire process, I feel that the medical community has been quite negligible in matters like these. I mean, government की तरफ से भी, private sector की तरफ से भी. बस ये तो कहा जाता है कि सैल्यूट कर रहे हैं मेडिकल कम्युनिटी को, बट उससे आगे ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं. मैं यहाँ तक ये बताता हूँ, बहुत अर्ली टाइम की बात है. दिस वाज वे बैक इन आई थिंक अप्रैल. अच्छा, तो मैं इमरजेंसी डिपार्टमेंट में काम कर रहा था, तो एक
April of
N95
this year or
मास्क होता
April
है.
of 2020?
लास्ट.
Okay.
So there's this mask called an N95 mask.
Yep.
It's a bigger mask and it's very painful. Like I had a scar on the bridge of my nose from wearing it. अब एक दिन ना मैं वापस अपनी गाड़ी में आ रहा हूँ विथ माई फादर. अच्छा, तो मैंने गाड़ी में मास्क उतार लिया, ठीक है. रास्ते में रेंजर्स ने रोक लिया, मुझे गाड़ी से बाहर निकलवाया, kind of sort of like humiliated me and then told me to wear a mask and stuff like that. I can understand that it was supposed to and everything. But come on, you can see a guy wearing a white coat coming back from the hospital who has a literal open scar on his nose where he can't put a mask on. And that was quite like.
I mean, to be quite honest, the impression that I've seen from our
I think I can understand it's your job and everything, but
yeah, I
sorry,
mean,
your voice.
the issue is the impression that I've seen from our like police and the rangers and whatnot, it seems to be that they're doing their job or whatever. But to be quite honest, whenever I've been out for any sort of work or anything, I've never seen any of them wearing their masks. I've never seen them wearing masks. I've never seen them maintaining any sort of distance, even amongst each other. And you've seen the sort of interstate violence that's been going on these past couple of days for people in Balochistan, right? So it seems as if anything that they're doing now is just for show. You know, it's not in anyone's best interest except their own. So I understand that they stopped you because they're like, okay, you need to be wearing a mask or whatever. But like you said, right, it's just for the sake of doing it rather than actually to be helpful, which I think is worse, right, than what if they'd actually be doing it for the right reasons.
कोविड के मामले में इशू ये है कि पाकिस्तानी जनरली डोंट बिलीव इट एज अ थिंग. अब अगर आप किसी चीज में बिलीव करते ही नहीं है तो यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू टेक इट सीरियसली. The police, like the people who are working in our law enforcement, they are also from the people. जैसे वो भी घर जाते हैं, वो भी घर में यही बातें करते होंगे कि तो कुछ है ही नहीं, कोई मसला ही नहीं. I was seeing this YouTube video a few days back. It was by Junaid Akram of an area in Garden Town. वहाँ पे पूरा माहौल फेस्टिवल लगा हुआ था रात के, कोई सुबह शाम 7 से लेके ना सुबह 5 बजे तक चलता है. वहाँ पे घोड़े हैं, ऊंट हैं, बच्चे खेल रहे हैं, क्रिकेट मैच चल रहा है, स्ट्रीट फूड चल रहा है. सपोजली देयर इज अ लॉकडाउन टिल 6 PM. 6 बजे के बाद दुकानें नहीं खुलनी होती हैं, कुछ नहीं होता. और वहाँ पे पूरी महफिल लगी हुई है। बात यही है कि अगर लोग एक चीज में यकीन नहीं करते और उनको एजुकेट ही नहीं किया गया कि उनको इस चीज में यकीन करें, तो वो कहाँ उस पर अमल करेंगे। ये वही कौम है जिसने पोलियो को सीरियसली नहीं लिया, वो अभी तक कहते हैं कि पोलियो की वैक्सीन से हमारे बच्चे नहीं हो पाएंगे और एक कोई साजिश है वगैरह। अफसोस की बात है, यानी पोलियो इतना प्रिवेंटेबल डिजीज है, जस्ट वन वैक्सीन एंड यूर फ्री फ्रॉम।
So Mushahid, like you mentioned, right?
आज भी मुझे बच्चे नजर आते हैं जो माजूर हैं। लाइसियम also had been affected by polio. She had difficulty moving back then. इसको वैक्सीन इतनी नहीं होती थी। अब तो है, फिर भी यही हाल लोगों का। ना उस पर एजुकेट किया गया तो वैक्सीन को सीरियसली लो, ना क्या कहते हैं, आई मीन सैडली स्पीकिंग, ना किसी को रिप्रोडक्टिव टॉपिक्स पे एजुकेट किया गया यहाँ पे। आई मीन पॉपुलेशन बूम हो रही है और लोग कहते हैं कि हमारे बच्चे करने से हमें वैक्सीन रोक रही हैं। आई मीन कम ऑन।
So Mushahid, I'm sorry for
Sadly,
cutting
the
you off.
problem in Pakistan has always been that.
So like you mentioned, right, कि बहुत सारे हमारे यहाँ पर जो communities हैं, they're very uneducated on these topics, right, कि vaccines की purpose एक तो क्या है, और and as well as many of the illnesses that we have these vaccines for. So one of the biggest questions that I've had, and I've even asked this of many of these people in the education industry, कि how do you combat this, right? For people like you and I who come from privilege, it's very easy for us to understand कि why COVID is a very big thing. It's very easy for us to understand why polio is a very threatening thing. But अब जो लोग हैं जो हम जैसे privileged नहीं हैं, जो हमारे जैसे schools में नहीं जा सकते, O levels नहीं कर सकते, या कभी कभी इंटर भी नहीं कर सकते, how do you get that message across to them without them retaliating with anger? Because this is something I've noticed as well, कि even मेरे घर में जो house help है, it's very difficult sometimes to talk to them about things like COVID, because these are things that they don't comprehend in the way that you and I do. And they're always, their solution to everything is just religion. But they don't factor in that religion is one of the things that promotes healthcare. It says to take care of yourself, so you, not only do you not hurt yourself, but your neighbor. So how if you got the opportunity, how would you talk to them?
Honestly, एक तो प्रॉब्लम ये रही है कि मिसट्रस्ट रहा है हमारे लोगों में और गवर्नमेंट में, और खास तौर पर इसमें गवर्नमेंट की गलती भी रही है। अगर आप पोलियो वैक्सीन की बात देखें तो क्वाइट फ्रेंकली जो ओसामा बिन लादेन पे रेड हुई थी, इट वाज डन अंडर द डिस्गाइज ऑफ पोलियो वैक्सीनेशन कैंपेन। पाकिस्तान में लोग एक कम्युनिटी जिसकी सुनते हैं, and that's a religious community. If you really need to get people on the street, you involve the religious community. If you really need to protest against something, involve the religious community. I think the solution has always been to get the religious community to spread awareness on these topics, because they are actually heard over here. जब तक वो नहीं किया जाएगा तो I don't think there's a way to get to people over here. You can't educate people overnight. You just can't. That's a process that will take decades, at minimum decades. उसमें वही होगा, आपको education reforms लाने हैं, but अभी आप क्या कर सकते हैं? You can encourage the उलमा और मौलवी हजरात जितने भी हैं कि वो इस पे कुछ करें, हर फ्राइडे सरमन में इस पे बात करें, हर दुआ में बात करें, वैक्सीनेशन कैंपेन एडवर्टाइजमेंट चलाएं जिसमें उनको make a video of them telling it about it publicly, openly. That's the only way to get to people over here, as long as they are not
But I
involved.
mean, so isn't the problem with their, like you mentioned, the clerics and all of these people, they also are part of the problem, aren't they? Because last year, when we were in this exact same time period, they were the ones who were fighting for mosques to open. They were the ones who were fighting for Eid ki namaz and all of these things, right? अब जैसे मेरी
Yes,
यूनिवर्सिटी के बिल्कुल बराबर में मॉस्क है, right? हर जुम्मे में लोग जाते हैं. And one of the biggest things that scares me is कि if there's 10 people going, 9 people aren't wearing masks. It's just the one person who's wearing a mask, right? अब you're packed with people. Literally इतना फासला है कभी भी वो भी नहीं होता, right? और जुम्मे की नमाज I'm sure आपको भी पता है कि किस तरीके का रश होता है. And that's nothing compared to Eid की नमाज. तो when you have people एक तो who aren't wearing mask, social distancing का तो नाम ही नहीं है, and then फिर आप ईद पे तो obviously गले भी मिलना है, मतलब हाथ छूने हैं, all of these things are going on. So when you have safeguards in place to prevent a global pandemic, but aapke, like you mentioned, the religious scholars themselves are the ones who aren't, stopping it. How do you go about it?
Honestly, if there was a good answer to this, I will give it. But मैं यही कहूँगा कि पाकिस्तान की हुकूमत को जब रिलीजियस स्कॉलर्स को किसी टॉपिक के लिए यूज करना पड़ा है तो उन्होंने किया है. It can be even the worst and the wrong kind of things. I mean, if you wanted to do a war in Afghanistan, you use the religious community. You wanted to cut the vote bank of a party, you use the religious community. If our government and if our military wants, they can use the religious community to spread awareness on this. I mean, sadly speaking, ये वही हिसाब है जो एक जमाने में होता था churches का in the West, where they used to have a lot of influence and power, a lot of political power. Sadly, our religious scholars and our religious community is also involved in a lot of politics. Uh, they, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of them are actually good people, but many of them are not. And many of them only understand one kind of they have only one way of understanding things. And if a government wants, they can actually use them for this purpose. It's not going to be easy, but honestly, how do you get people on board? You get people either, वहाँ पे तो ये भी हिसाब है कि लोगों की अपनी family में deaths होंगी and yet they're not taking it seriously.
Exactly. And that's like, I think, the worst part, because you see people who've gone through the virus themselves, who've been sick themselves, but फिर भी उनको कुछ करना ही नहीं है. And I think the worst part about it, and I actually discussed this in a previous episode, was how because a lot of people aren't seeing the full effect of the virus as well, I think that's one of the reasons why people aren't taking it too seriously, because they're like, हाँ बुखार हुआ था, थोड़ा सा गले में दर्द हुआ तो 2-3 दिन आराम किया था, हम सही हो गए थे. So what would you say to people like that? Like, it's not just that.
Exactly. So like with every infection, there are like two factors. One's your body, your host defense, and the other is the organism itself. अब मैं एक आपको सिंपल सा एग्जांपल देता हूँ. इन्फ्लुएंजा वायरस जिससे नजला होता है नॉर्मल ना. सो वी गेट इट एवरी टाइम. हर गर्मियों में एक बार होता है, सर्दियों में एक बार होता है. We only get a slight flu from it. Nothing happens to us. But before COVID, I saw many elderly people who died in the hospital with the same influenza virus. आपकी बॉडी के होस्ट फैक्टर से बड़ा उनका भी रिस्पॉन्स होता है. अब अगर देखा जाए तो कोविड वायरस जस्ट लाइक एनी वायरस इन द वर्ल्ड, इट्स हैविंग इट्स नॉर्मल म्यूटेशंस होती है, उनकी नई वेरिएशन बन जाती है. पहले लोगों ने सीरियसली नहीं लिया था कोविड को. दूसरी स्ट्रेन आई विद द यूके स्ट्रेन, द ब्राजीलियन वायरस. It's causing even more severe infections right now. All I'll say is to the people who don't take it seriously, even after getting it, that you can get infected again. And if by any chance you get infected with the Indian variant, then you can see the videos and the pictures of what's it doing to people.
So, I mean, it's interesting that you pointed out the Indian virus, because that leads me to a lot of the things that, aren't being stopped because of our government. Just say, for example, in recent times, for example, what was I saying? Yeah, so the examinations for O and A levels were.
So we don't know the long-term effects as yet. But if we're not going to take it seriously, what's going to happen is that viruses need, like, they need hosts to mutate. It's very possible we might have a new mutation that starts in Pakistan itself, based upon the factors that people here are carriers of tuberculosis, people here are carriers of multiple diseases, and paired with that with COVID, you never know, you might have a new super strain of virus that might arise from this country and cause havoc everywhere else.
So, it's interesting that you pointed out the different variants and even the Indian variant, right? So this leads me to how the government is currently not stopping a lot of these different congregations and whatnot, right? So just say, for example, the O and A level exams, they were pushed forward to October, November, whereas most of the work is going for school assessed grades, right? So in that sort of situation, what are you supposed to do when your government itself is not taking it seriously? We have it on record that our prime minister himself in the start said कि आपको कोई डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, this is just a flu and it's nothing big. So I can understand. I like, so when I initially heard that, I was super upset because I was like, ये क्या बोल रहे हैं? I mean, has he not seen how bad it was when it came from there? But then I also realized, okay, maybe he's actually trying not to spread panic in the country, right? He's trying to maintain law and order, and he's like, okay, let's take this calmly and rationally. But I feel like that calm and rationale, it's also spread so much that people are just, well, अभी भी घबरा नहीं रहे हैं. And that's, I think, the problem.
कस्टमर बात है काम और कामली और रैशनली तो वो लोग समझेंगे ना जो पढ़े लिखे होंगे और एक्चुअली अंडरस्टैंड करते होंगे इस चीज को। यहाँ तो आपको डराना ही पड़ेगा। I mean, without fear, you can't get this across. I mean, I really think people should start showing pictures and images of people suffering, like going through what they're going through in the hospitals. I mean, that might actually start at least scare a certain group of a population,
And
not the
and
whole
just
of
say,
it.
for example, the whole moving the exams forward, what's your opinion on that? Do you think the exams just should be cancelled altogether right now, or do you think they were right that they just moved them forward? Like, what's your opinion on
I
that?
think इसमें so as far as the education is concerned, अगर मैं कहूँ तो यहाँ पे भी फिर वही mistrust वाली बात है। Can you really trust school assessed grades? I mean, there's a lot of good students who end up getting bad grades and a lot of bad students who end up getting good grades. I understand it's a pandemic, so it's in need of a time. So I think based upon it being a need of the time, we should have had school assessed grades this time and opened the
And
exams later this
Mushahid,
year.
it's like a lot of the people who were complaining abhi when I think May June wale jo 2020 wale grades aaye the, it honestly for me it was a moment of kind of, I mean, I don't know how to phrase it, but just I have always been someone who has personally felt as if I always got the short end of the stick in O and A levels, right? I personally don't believe in Cambridge as a system anymore. And
Mhm.
it was very interesting to see how people were complaining कि oh लोग पैसे दे के grades ले लेते हैं in school assessed grades या हमारे grades आने थे but school ने मसले किए, and I was like, yeah, that's literally been a lot of people in Cambridge, because in my own A-level experience I've seen students who were supposed to get A's and A stars ending up with either C's, D's, or just failing altogether.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. It's just कि May, June, May 2020, people got to see how bad it actually is. So as far as, the government and even Shafkat Tawan and all of these people, education ministers, all of them, they're talking about how, students are just taking advantage of the situation or whatever. लेने दो भाई. मतलब, okay, my
No, it's
biggest
a
issue
need of
with them, yeah, and my biggest issue with them right now is कि आपको कैसे फर्क पड़ रहा है? It's not affecting you. Worst case scenario, if anyone is going to be affected, it's those kids who are going to use those fake grades or whatever, right, to get into the universities of tomorrow. Worst case scenario, these kids are going to suffer for the first couple of months, maybe the first year or two, but eventually they will bounce back, right? The world as it is right now is in a very different place. Like you mentioned, हमारे doctors घर से बैठ के पढ़ सकते हैं नहीं, but उनकी education रुक गई है. मैं वकील बन रहा हूँ. My entire degree is based on going out, networking, meeting people, talking, right? Being in person. That's affected right now. And there's so many things that are just stuck. आपका मेरा passion of photography, that's just stuck because of this thing. But we all have to adapt, right? And we are doing it in one way or the other. अगर किसी एक को थोड़ा extra फायदा मिल रहा है इस वक्त, why does it matter? It's the same
सिंपल
thing that
बात
I
है।
often. जी जी.
अभी एक मजबूरी है, तो they should have gone with it. उसकी बात ये भी है कि यूनिवर्सिटीज इन पाकिस्तान वैसे ही एंटी टेस्ट होता है। I mean, your grades aren't that important over here. They are important for universities abroad. और वो तो बहुत सारे factors पे assess करती हैं. So it's easy for them to actually pick out the student. They don't just look at the grades. पाकिस्तान में तो सारी universities के anti test होते हैं, regardless of it. So the grades wouldn't have
जी.
mattered for that. लेकिन फिर यहाँ पे दूसरी बात भी ये आती है कि why has the conversation only revolved around like exams, Cambridge exams? I've known people who have had university exams with online university exams behind a
Right.
computer screen. खुलेआम चीटिंग उसमें नीचे
ठीक है.
फोन रख के और देख रहे हैं तो हो रहा है. अभी जितने भी प्रोफेशनल एग्जाम्स हैं मेडिकल कॉलेजेस के पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट एग्जाम्स वो भी चल रहे हैं. अभी मेरा भी फेलोशिप का एग्जाम है इट्स शेड्यूल्ड फॉर 25th में. आई डोंट नो व्हाट्स
ठीक.
गोइंग टू गेट कैंसिल और नॉट बट इट्स नेसेसरी फॉर इट टू गो ऑन. अगर वो भी कैंसिल हो गया तो डॉक्टर कहाँ से आएगा.
ये.
तो यहाँ पे बहुत जरूरी है कि ठीक है आपको अगर एक्चुअल फिजिकल एग्जाम्स करने हैं तो why not start actually implementing whatever your so-called SOPs are in it. आप एग्जामिनेशन सेंटर में 400 लोगों को ना डालें भाई 50 लोगों को डालें अच्छा खासा उनमें पास कर रखते हैं. सबसे
ये.
ज्यादा मसला मैंने देखा है यहाँ पे किसी भी गैदरिंग में ना इन पाकिस्तान होता है. गैदरिंग में आते हैं और गैदरिंग से जाते हैं वहां पे सबसे ज्यादा वायलेशन होती है.
I'm sorry, Mushahid, could
When
you repeat
people
that,
exam
please?
all that's
आपकी
when it's
आवाज कट
okay.
गई थी.
Those are the two places where you actually need to like. हाँ मैं कह रहा था कि किसी भी गैदरिंग में ना दो जगहों पर सबसे ज्यादा लोग ना एक दूसरे से कांटेक्ट में आते हैं. एक तो एग्जाम हॉल के अंदर या कहीं पे भी एंटर होते हैं और बाहर निकल.
Yep.
आपने खुद देखा होगा एग्जाम खत्म हुआ लाइन लग गई बाहर जाने के लिए.
Yep.
सो let's start actually implementing actual social distancing matters in these exams. I mean एक हॉल में आप 400 लोगों को ना डालें 50 लोगों को डालें 20 लोगों को डालें एक एक करके बाहर जाने दें लोगों को. Make sure people have actually left before you allow the other person. It's going to take more time, it's going to take more effort, but ये तो adaptation करनी ही पड़ेगी ना. इसमें अगर आप पैसे बचाएंगे तो फिर क्या फायदा. I remember मुझे like when I gave my Cambridge exams मैं 2012 और 2014 में दिए थे. उस जमाने में भी कैम्ब्रिज इज सच अ बिग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और वो इतने बुरे सेंटर्स बनाती थी. लाइक आई एम गिविंग अ पेपर एंड दिस कॉकरोच इज क्लाइंबिंग अप ऑन माय चेयर. दैट इज जस्ट वेरी स्ट्रेंज फॉर कैम्ब्रिज.
And I
होते
think
आपने
another
इतना पैसा
really
कमाया
big
तो
issue was
बजाय
कि
इसके कि आप इतना
जी जी.
नहीं बोला.
So I mean, one really big thing that I saw this year was कि the education minister is just talking about how we're not going to have too many people, we're going to make it social distance or whatever. And it was upsetting to see on his Twitter, on his official Twitter, he posted pictures of one center. I believe it was KGS Karachi, if I'm not mistaken. So he posted pictures of that, and that was the only place that I personally saw pictures of जहाँ पर एक space के बाद desk रखे हुए थे. I'm sure you remember किस तरह के desks होते थे, right? So everywhere else I saw desks normal spacing के हिसाब से थे. कोई एक जगह छुड़ी हुई नहीं थी, and the halls were packed as normal.
Exactly.
अब even if those students are wearing masks, it doesn't make a difference because you still have those same people in that environment. And because you're bringing in so many different people from so many different backgrounds, you don't know if all of those people are safe or not, right? So it's really upsetting to see one of my biggest issues just in general with the examinations this time around was they were expecting a lot of these students to give exams which are already difficult in and of themselves, right? But if you factor in online learning, these exams which would normally make people cry, these exams were now making people have anxiety attacks. So
I agree.
I
I
don't think
mean,
it's fair कि आप बच्चों को आपने पिछले 1.5 साल से आप ऑनलाइन पढ़ा रहे हो. And let's be real, online learning was very, very difficult and not very
it
effective.
is.
It should have been done in a very different manner. And for countries that were a little more developed than us, I think they had a better transition, but they were also struggling with online learning. Ab, keeping that in mind, हमारी position, हमारे resources or lack of thereof, कि हमने किस तरीके से adapt किया, I don't think it's fair कि इन्होंने उसी लेवल के एग्जाम्स उसी तरीके से करना. कि अगर इनको फिजिकल एग्जाम्स करने थे, they could have changed them a little bit. जैसे मेरे LLB के एग्जाम्स जो हुए थे, बेसिकली हमारे नॉर्मली एग्जाम्स आई बिलीव 3-3.5 घंटे के होते हैं, हमारे 4 क्वेश्चन होते हैं. हमारे एग्जाम्स भी ended up happening 2020 में ऑनलाइन. अब rather than having us do 4 questions in 3 hours, they made us do, I believe, 2 questions in 3.5 hours. That's better. That's more adaptive, and it's. I mean, they're taking into account how difficult the world is right now. Ista learning kya kiya? They've given us more time, but they've increased the number of questions. 4 questions, 5 years. They're adapting. They're learning. They're trying to do better. It's not the best, but it's a little bit better, right? So
Mhm.
this assumption that students are just cheating or that they're taking the easy way out, it's infuriating to me because let's be real, when you're in the real world, you're not going to be cheating when you're going to look up something that you don't know or that you don't remember. It's going to be like basic, it's going to be a basic requirement of whatever you're doing. I'm sure there's instances where you're in the theater or whatever. I'm sure there's things that you don't remember on the spot, right? You're gonna go back, you're gonna look them up, and then you're gonna come back. आपके कोई सीनियर या जूनियर आपको आके तो नहीं बोलेंगे ना आप चीटिंग कर रहे हो, आप क्यों पढ़ रहे हो, आपको तो ये सारा रटा हुआ होना चाहिए, 6 साल से आप डॉक्टर हो, आपको तो पता होना चाहिए ना सारा. I don't think that's fair, right? I personally don't believe in standardized testing.
Yeah, वही बात है कि we need to be adaptive, especially now. बात ये है कि जनरली स्पीकिंग पाकिस्तान में कुछ भी कराने के लिए ना you need to be a bit strict. उसी तरह ऑब्वियसली एक तो हमारा सेटअप नहीं था फॉर ऑनलाइन क्लासेस.
Definitely.
सेकेंडली मोटिवेशन भी नहीं थी फॉर ऑनलाइन क्लासेस. यू नीड बोथ फैक्टर्स. अब आपको हो गई है. अब देखा जाए तो कैम्ब्रिज और हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल एग्जाम्स आर नॉट एसेंशियल एग्जाम्स. एसेंशियल एग्जाम्स होते हैं प्रोफेशनल एग्जाम्स, यूनिवर्सिटी एग्जाम्स, because you need a workforce. Those need to happen with every protocol, with every space. And yes, you are right. I mean, institutes need to understand कि उनकी ऑनलाइन लर्निंग से चीजें बर्बाद हुई हैं, चीजें सही नहीं हुई. मेरा जो जूनियर बैच है यूनिवर्सिटी का, they had it really bad. I mean, many of them failed. A higher percentage of them failed as compared to our batch. A lower percentage of them was able to get into good institutes for house job simply because of online classes. They just couldn't. I mean, physical classes में यहाँ के professors नहीं knowledge दे पाते तो online classes में वो कहाँ दे पा रहे हैं. So yes, adaptation needs to happen. बिल्कुल वहाँ पे like your institute did a good thing. They increased the hours on it. I mean, people need to start coming up with more easier tests. They need to make the changes in them. जहाँ तक high school level exams की बात है तो those can always happen in the future and you can give school assessed grades for them. But yes, फिर वहाँ पे भी कुछ regulation तो करनी ही पड़ेगी schools और colleges की. Like I mean, you couldn't like one school is giving out really good school assessed grades, another school isn't giving out really good school assessed grades. Sadly, हमारा system तो based standardized testing की पे है ना.
जी, definitely.
तो इतनी जल्दी चेंज नहीं किया जा सकता. और फिर वही बात घूम करके आ जाती है इन पाकिस्तान यूनिवर्सिटीज. यू हैव टू गिव एन एंट्री टेस्ट एनीवेज. और उसमें जितनी
जितनी ख्वारी उसमें लगती है फिर वही.
वो दुनिया का सबसे बुरा एग्जाम होता है. वो हर चीज उसमें यानी अल्लाह माफ करे whoever comes up with those exams. I mean, those people are the first people that need to be changed in this educational setup. जो भी जिस यूनिवर्सिटी का एग्जाम. I've never seen a good entry exam for any university except our Khans. They had an amazing entry test. मैंने दिमाग चलाने वाला था. But मैंने डाउ का entry test दिया, clear किया. Absurdly stupid. ज़ियाउद्दीन का O level का बच्चा clear कर ले. इतना यानी yes, you don't need to study. उसमें बेनज़ीर की किताबों का नाम पूछा हुआ था. यानी कि yes, they asked.
Medical school.
There was a literal question. Yes, there was a literal question that was asking what book has been written for Benazir Bhutto. There was a question on it. So इस तरह क्या आता है. अभी मैं देने जाने वाला हूँ एक प्रोफेशनल एग्जाम है. It's a fellowship exam. उसका एंट्री टेस्ट है. Horrible. Like ratta. That's just how it works in Pakistan, sadly.
I mean, yeah, it's upsetting to see, but that really is how it is. हमारे यहाँ पर बचपन से लेके अब तक यही सिखाने कि रट लो, समझ नहीं आया रट लो, ऐसे का ऐसे ही आएगा. And I mean that is how it is for the most part.
अब मैं आपको बताऊं, like there are some questions in these past paper books जिनका आंसर गलत है. You know it's the wrong answer. You absolutely know, but you have to pick the wrong answer in it. Because the institute in the last 20 years did not bother to even update that question. And that really begins to make you question about the quality of higher education in this country. Universities के नाम तो बहुत अच्छे बने हुए हैं, लेकिन are they actually producing quality? That is left open to debate, especially in the medical field. I mean, अभी एक और पाकिस्तान मेडिकल काउंसिल जो होता है जो रेगुलेट करता है उसने एक नेशनल लाइसेंसिंग एग्जाम इंट्रोड्यूस करा दिया
Mhm.
जो कि इस साल और फर्दर साल के बच्चों को देना होगा वो भी
Right.
वही रट्टे वाला एग्जाम आएगा व्हाट डिफरेंस विल दैट मेक you'll actually be like I know smart people I know people who are genius in medicine who have
Mhm.
failed these sort of entry tests because they use their mind instead of rectifying it.
Yep.
And I've seen people who didn't study their entire 5 years of medicine and still clear these exams by just going through a past paper book a day before the exam. With that
Yep.
kind of level of education, you really can. I'm sorry to say, I have doubts as a doctor myself on a lot of other doctors and a lot of other professionals in this field.
And the
Uh,
problem with that sort of mindset as well is that you're promoting that sort of concept, right? You're promoting lazy students and you're telling them that your actual intelligence or your actual capabilities don't matter right now. Because that's one of the biggest reasons why so many of our students end up, going abroad because they feel कि उनकी वहां पर एटलीस्ट उनकी कैपेबिलिटीज एक्सेप्ट की जाएंगी वहां पर एटलीस्ट उनको proper attention मिलेगा and among other things as well you can't really fault them for wanting what's arguably better for them. It's
yes, you
upsetting to
can't
see
fault
but it
people
it,
for
it
like.
is what it is.
I mean, you really can't ask like expect people not to go after a better life. अब मैंने O levels किया, मैंने A levels किया, मैं gold medal लेके यूनिवर्सिटी से निकला, मैंने highest education possible ली. But
Mhm,
further education of medicine in Pakistan is not up to that standard.
mhm.
So obviously I'll want to go abroad for it. अच्छा
Exactly.
दूसरा एक मैटर आई मीन लोग कहते हैं कि डॉक्टरों को खासतौर पे बात नहीं करनी चाहिए लेकिन आई मीन everyone needs finances. Everyone deserves to have fun in their life. Everyone deserves to enjoy their life. I mean, doctor, we have agreed to serve humanity, but we haven't agreed to serve humanity at our own cost, at our own mental
Definitely.
health, at our own physical health, which is constantly being violated over here. यहाँ पे एक जनरल परसेप्शन है, खासतौर पे डॉक्टर्स पैसे बहुत कमाते हैं. That's an absolute lie.
Mhm,
As a house officer, I got paid 50,000 rupees per month. That was for like that was a normal duty of 12 hours every day and a call every third or fourth day, which is a 30 to 36 hour duty. So that's every third day. With that, I got paid 50,000 rupees. A lot of my colleagues who went to other hospitals got only paid 20,000. A lot of them
mhm.
did not get paid at all.
Yep.
Now, after house job, you start your residency. Residency is a 5 years program, 5 years. And there are
Mhm.
a lot of people in Pakistan who are doing unpaid residency. Imagine giving up your life for 5 years without any pay whatsoever. And those that are even getting paid are getting paid somewhere between 40 to 60,000 rupees only as a doctor. You can earn that same amount as an Uber driver in Pakistan, but that's what the salaried income is.
I mean, you
And
can earn
if you
that as like a graphic designer with like a couple of
exactly. You
hours
can
per
earn
week.
that. You can earn more, like 4 or 5 times more than that as a photographer, especially
I
if you're
mean,
doing
yeah, that
weddings.
it's hilarious because you and I as photographers, we're probably earning just as much, if not more, than our actual degrees right now. I mean,
Exactly.
we know
And
that any decent wedding, minimum आपको शादी का कराची में या anywhere in पाकिस्तान आपको 50,000 तो आपने देने ही देने हैं.
mm,
ज्यादा से ज्यादा अगर आप बिल्कुल टॉप पे चल रहे हो जैसे Fatma Tariq and all of these, I'm pretty
yes,
sure they're taking like what 2.5 if I'm not mistaken, 2.5 and
minimum
above,
2.5, even more than that.
probably, yeah.
Yes.
So it's insane. And then I think one of the biggest things that really grates on my nerves is that people don't give that same level of respect to creatives. Because I think
Mm,
वही same mentality है जो अभी 20-25 साल पहले की थी कि ये लोग तो कुछ कमाते नहीं है सिर्फ ऐसे ही जाते हैं मतलब
mm,
अपना ड्रामा करके आते हैं घर पे और बैठ के कुछ
mm,
मिलते नहीं है. And it's kind of
mm,
upsetting to see how the roles have reversed. At a certain
mm.
point, I would hope that doctors were being paid better, but now doctors are being paid like the same amount as like an entry level graphic designer.
Exactly.
So I
I
mean,
mean, a lot lesser than that. अब वही सोचो ना,
clearly,
5 साल यूनिवर्सिटी में काम, आई मीन मेडिसिन पढ़ा, उसके बाद 5 साल पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन और लर्निंग की, ओनली टू अर्न दिस स्मॉल अमाउंट. and when you
And
can
then
easily
and then
make money in other
even
ways.
that isn't confirmed, like you said कि बहुत
Hmm.
जगहों पे वो भी नहीं मिलता, so it's even
So,
worse, right?
exactly. So yes, ये तो चीज change हुई है. I mean, that's probably the same case for engineers as well. I'm not sure. But yes, creative fields are actually earning quite a lot more these days. थोड़ी सी change in
Definitely.
perception भी आया है. I've done like weddings where I was actually respected as a photographer. Like you can tell if the client actually
Yep.
respects me. And I've sadly also done weddings or events जहाँ पे वो जो general perception होते हैं to look of
Yeah.
a photographer. To think like a lot of people at events they get shocked when I tell them I'm a doctor. They're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
because
because
they're
if
not expecting.
you're not expecting a doctor to be covering a wedding, right?
No, just generally you're not expecting like people like photographers to be educated or highly qualified, even though
Yeah.
उसकी भी qualification उतनी ही है, उसकी पे भी मेहनत उतनी ही लगती है.
And it's even sadder to see that people don't, like you said, right? People don't expect photographers to be very educated because you see them as just these people जो आके अपना रगड़ा लगा रहे होते हैं. एंड में आई थिंक वो एक जनरल परसेप्शन सबका ये था ना कि शादी फोटोग्राफर तो आते हैं सिर्फ खानों की प्लेटों की तस्वीरें लेते हैं लोगों के खाने खाते हुए एंड दैट्स व्हाट दे डू राइट बट आई डोंट थिंक एनीवन रियली रियलाइजेस हाउ मच brain power and imagination takes to be a photographer, right? Anyone who's used Photoshop even for 5-10 minutes, if they don't know what they're doing, वो डर के बंद कर देते हैं. Even that was me like a few years ago.
Agree,
फोटोशॉप होता ही नहीं था.
I agree.
लाइटरूम पे सारा काम कर रहा था. अब फोटोशॉप के बगैर मुझे समझ नहीं आता कि मैं काम कैसे करूं. तो they don't understand you need a very high learning of all of these things. You need to know how shadows work, how highlights work, how your exposure triangle needs to work. All of these things are things that you wouldn't know as a normal everyday person. But this is our bread and
Exactly.
butter.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a photographer, but right now, if I open Premiere Pro up, it scares me. मुझे anxiety होने लगती है. मैं बंद करता हूँ, मैं DaVinci Resolve खोल लेता हूँ. It's a bit easier to use that.
Yep.
So yes, it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of time. Sadly, फिर वही घूम फिर के बात आती है कि यहाँ पे, especially in creative fields like photography, you do get exploited quite a lot as well. I mean,
Yep.
बाहर आप देखें तो एक सिंपल सा शूट 10 पिक्चर्स ले रहा है फोटोग्राफर $500. That's the least that they're
I
charging
mean,
in the
that's the
States right
minimum.
now.
You're taking
Yes.
100
Over
dollars,
here,
150.
the thing that saddens me and even angers me at times, मैं कहता नहीं हूँ ऐसे clients को. But especially if you have a brand, your purpose with that brand is to earn money.
Hey,
Your purpose is
इतना
to earn
दुख
money,
होता है. Right.
and then you like DM asking for a collab is something that really.
So I mean, it's completely upsetting to see कि आप बड़े brands, even startups, right? Whatever you're giving to them, that is an investment. मेरी एक तस्वीर या मेरी 10 तस्वीरें चलो आपने अपने Instagram पे लगा दी, right? Let's say you're paying me 10,000. Bare minimum that you should be paying a photographer for fashion photography in Karachi right now. That 10,000 will be if you make good clothes, if you're a decent brand, that 10,000 will be recovered in 2 to 3 dresses. That's all it's going to take. आपको मेरे 10,000 से आपको at least लाख रुपए का फायदा हो जाएगा और मुझे आप 10,000 देने पे रो रहे हो.
ये की परसेप्शन बनी हुई होती है लोगों में कि क्या कहते हैं कि एक्सपोजर हम बेच सकते हैं as a
यार
brand or
एक्सपोजर
as a
कचरा है,
celebrity or
कुछ
something.
नहीं
It
मिलता,
doesn't make any
कुछ नहीं
difference
मिलता.
because at the end of the day, whether you have 100 followers or you have 3,000 followers, what matters are clients. And
I think फिर वही
ये issue जो current problem होती है कि okay fine you did the collab, I mean you did the collab, it's fine, ठीक है आपने कर लिया collab, आप at least respect the photographer's work and creative touch to it. Do not re-edit those pictures, do not post them
इतना
without
दुख होता
tagging,
है,
do not
इतना
post them
दुख
without
होता है, मतलब
credits.
गंदा सा
मैं
इंस्टाग्राम पे फिल्टर
कॉन्ट्रैक्ट
डाल
साइन
देते हैं.
करवाता हूँ फिर भी वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट वायलेट किया जाता है. I mean I only do like small collabs like personal collabs. मैं तो वो करने छोड़ती हूँ, मैं अपनी मर्जी वाले करता हूँ जो कि मुझे अपने पेज के लिए चाहिए होता है. Otherwise I don't do with brands or anything like that. But अब मैं एक और बड़ी अजीब सी चीज होती है कि एक और भी परसेप्शन है इन लाइक क्लाइंट्स इन पाकिस्तान के इक्विपमेंट मैटर्स. आई रिसेंटली हैड अ क्लाइंट.
So
अब मैं बताता
bad.
हूँ. अब एक
So
क्लाइंट मेरे
bad.
पास आया. एक क्लाइंट मेरे पास आए. स्टार्टअप ब्रांड था एंड एवरीथिंग. आई वाज लाइक ओके, यू आर अ स्टार्टअप ब्रांड. मैं अपने पैकेज की भी आधे पैसे आपको चार्ज करूंगा. यू आर अ स्टार्टअप ब्रांड, आई अंडरस्टैंड. ठीक है. बट आई हैव अ मिररलेस कैमरा एंड आई हैव these two lenses.
Yep.
Minimum अच्छा, we want wide angle shots, we want 28 mm
I'm sorry,
shots. I'm
Mushahid,
like,
can you
I
repeat
can
that,
do
please?
that,
आपकी
but
आवाज कट गई थी. We heard you
what
after like lenses and
I
आपकी आवाज
can
पे कट गई थी.
do is give me the creative power. I will give, अच्छा, मेरे पास दो. I have two lenses. Not even an iPhone Z5.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
It,
आपकी आवाज
it,
कट गई थी बीच में. I
it
think my
like
Wi-Fi
just
crashed as well. Like I heard you to like about like I heard you like about my lenses. I have like the two lenses and आपकी आवाज completely कट गई थी.
अच्छा,
My Wi-Fi
चलो.
crashed in the middle.
तो मेरे पास दो lenses हैं, 50 और 85.
Yep.
35 millimeter lens मेरा खराब हुआ है आजकल. So I'm just
So
using a 50 and 85 these days.
right.
So this client, they came in, they had a few set of ideas. Those were nice ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I said I can do these. I can do them perfectly fine with a 50 and a 85.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, no, we want lights, we want wider angle shots. We
Mm-hmm.
want you to take like maybe you have a 28 or a 35. I'm like, I don't. I literally only use my mirrorless camera with two lenses. I don't use artificial lighting. I don't use ring lighting. जितने भी लाइटिंग के इशू होते हैं मैं वो एडिटिंग में भी फिक्स कर लेता हूँ. इतना इशू नहीं होता. एंड इफ यू आर आफ्टर अ क्रिएटिव शूट तो आपके लिए शैडोज इतना मसला नहीं होगा कैसे. तो उन्होंने कहा ठीक है. आई थॉट दे वर गोना हायर मी बट टर्न्स आउट 2-3 days later they hired someone else. अब उन्होंने अच्छा खासा पैसा इन्वेस्ट किया. मेकअप आर्टिस्ट थे, बैकड्रॉप सेट हुए हुए थे, फोटोग्राफर थे 2-3. पूरा उन्होंने ना, आई मीन कहूँगा कम से कम अगर मैं उससे चार्ज कर रहा था उसके 4-5 गुना ज्यादा उन्होंने पे किया होगा.
Oh wow.
And they just recently posted pictures on their page and they were horrible.
Oh
I
God.
really, I mean, if I showed you those right now, you'll be like, what are these? Absolutely terribly horrible.
I mean,
So I think people need to get over the notion that gear matters. मेरा जो सबसे initial काम है मेरे page पे, which I still think is one of my best work, I was taken with the Canon 700D and a 50 millimeter pancake lens. मुश्किल से setup 60,000 rupees का था. That's my best one. I'm using a mirrorless camera right now, 2.5 lakh का with उतने ही महंगे lenses, and it's still almost the. और वो भी ज्यादातर लोग नहीं बता पाते हैं इसमें डिफरेंस. तो people need to get over the notion that
honestly, I completely
gear
agree, right?
matters. I mean,
Um,
photographer को gear matter नहीं करता, उसकी team नहीं matter करती, उससे picture.
yeah, and I completely agree with that. Okay, a good photographer can get you the best results even with like a really garbage setup, but a terrible photographer with the best gear can't get you anything. So it's very important, and this is something that I often have to tell myself as well. कि देखो, अभी जब तक काम अच्छा चल रहा है, we're not going to spend money on this. जब काम रुक जाएगा
True.
because of issues, तब जाके पैसे इसमें डालना है. That's the
सही
biggest thing that
बात
I
है,
have to hold
बिल्कुल.
myself back on, because this passion is
Exactly.
expensive. It's very expensive. It pays itself back, but it's very expensive. And until you can get
It
that
is.
sort of point where you're
It
like,
is.
yeah, this $500 or $700 or $800 lens is gonna pay itself back twice, I don't think it's a good investment. I don't.
It is.
And yeah, I mean, it's sad to see that people are still so obsessed with it, though, looks about everything, especially gear, and then about not paying creatives enough. Creatives are definitely not paid enough, in my opinion, because it's not just the time that I'm investing for your work. It's the time I'm taking once I'm back home. It's the time I'm taking to edit. It's the time that I'm using my brain power. And one of the biggest things that I feel like people don't realize is that you're not just paying me for my services, you're paying me for my experience. जो मैं आपको काम 2-3 दिन में करके दे, वो आपको दूसरा कोई शायद 1 हफ्ते में करके दे, वो भी शायद उतना अच्छा ना करके दे. So it's really important that these things are understood, accepted, and promoted more often. Because being completely honest, we are the future. हमारे बगैर किसी का काम चलना नहीं है, टेक्निकली स्पीकिंग. I mean, आपका शायद चल जाएगा, आप लोग डॉक्टर हो, आपको मेरी जरूरत नहीं है खैर. But creatives are going to be needed everywhere, and it's high. I mean, honestly speaking, pay everyone well, dude. People need to start paying everyone well. जो भी हो, चाहे वो डॉक्टर हो, चाहे वो photographer, जो भी हो, pay people well. It's not that hard.
I think exploitation का culture अब खत्म हो जाना चाहिए.
I mean, baby steps,
Like
I
it
guess.
really, I mean, especially for brands and weddings, I mean, you're spending minimum 10 lakh रुपए वैसे ही, तो it wouldn't hurt
Same.
to pay a photographer well as well. I mean, you shouldn't choose photography as the only place you decide to cheap out. That I
And
mean, at the
it's
end of
really
the day, you
upsetting
won't
कि
get quality
बहुत दफा
work. I mean, it's
बहुत दफा
also
I've been
very,
approached by people
it's
because
very,
उनके पास बजट थोड़ा सा रहेगा, दे रहे हाँ यार तुम कर दोगे. मैंने बोला नहीं, मैं क्यों कर दूंगा इतने में. ख्वारी मेरी लग रही है, काम मेरा ज्यादा एक्स्ट्रा हो रहा है, बट you're the one who's saying इतने में कर दो. क्यों भाई?
I mean, I sometimes turn down clients. I mean, पैसे तो आ रहे होते हैं, but अगर आपको महसूस हो रहा होता है ना कि इस तरफ से कोई रिस्पेक्ट नहीं आ रहा है, they don't think humanly of you, तो बंदे को काम नहीं करना चाहिए, तो फिर उसका ना इज्जत नहीं होगी. आप वो पिक्चर्स बना के भी उनको दे देंगे, वो जरूर उस पर कोई फिल्टर लगा के उसको बर्बाद
कुछ ना
कर
कुछ
देंगे,
होता ही है,
कुछ कर
definitely.
देंगे. So at that point you really like suddenly, I mean, मैंने ना फोटोग्राफी से ना ज़्यादा कमाया नहीं, अच्छी बात है. It's hard to get clients. एक तो दूसरी बात ये होती है कि आजकल मैंने नोटिस किया कि बहुत ज़्यादा connections भी मैटर करते हैं.
Definitely.
Mutuals होते हैं, connections होते हैं, you can easily get clients. Or if you belong to a particular circle, it also helps. Well, if you don't, then it's a bit difficult to get clients. तो वही बात है. पर दूसरी बात ये भी होती है कि लोगों को चाहिए होती है टीम वाला फोटोग्राफर हो. You should have a team or
Definitely.
something. And that is
Definitely, yeah.
understandable. Weddings को अकेला cover करना possible
It's
काम
very
नहीं
very
है.
difficult,
You
yeah.
can do wedding portraits. You can do portraits like stage
But
portraits or couple
coverage नहीं हो
portraits,
पाती है.
but event coverage possible नहीं हो पाती. That why I end up losing a lot of clients. So जाहिर सी बात है, अगर एक client के पास, जिनकी उनकी बात करें जो बजट है, अब उनके पास 2-3 लाख का बजट है, वो they'll probably hire someone better जो कि हर चीज ये कर दे, rather than
Yep.
just photography, and that's what people
Yep.
mostly prefer. So that's completely understandable. So like if I say मैंने क्या earn back किया है अपनी investment, not even close. लिया
But
मैंने
hopefully,
mirrorless camera शौक
hopefully
में था
down the line.
लाइक नहीं, मुझे ये था कि अभी मैं लेंसेज पे बिल्कुल इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहा. आई मीन आई विल नॉट बाय अ 35 मिलीमीटर टिल आई अर्न दैट अमाउंट ऑफ 35 मिलीमीटर. एक अच्छा नाइकॉन जी का
Understandable.
35 मिलीमीटर 1.5 लाख का लेंस है, वो मैं
Yep.
नहीं लेने वाला अभी.
Yep.
तो let's see where that goes. अभी तो कोविड फिर से, आई मीन विद लॉकडाउन एंड एवरीथिंग, इवेंट्स वगैरह तो ऑब्वियसली कम हो रहे हैं, तो वो तो वैसे ही ज़्यादा नहीं आएंगे. But let's see.
Inshallah, hopefully things will get better. I think we should just wrap up the episode just about here. Mushahid, do you have any closing comments for our audience?
The closing comment that I'll give is like, please start taking COVID seriously. It doesn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt you to sit back at home for a month. It wouldn't hurt you to avoid a wedding. It wouldn't hurt you to wear a mask at a wedding. मैं सच बता रहा हूँ, मेरी खुद की इस साल शादी हुई है earlier this year, and I requested, I begged people to wear masks. ठीक है, बदले में जुमला ये बुलाता रहता है कि शादी पे मास्क कौन पहनता है. That's wrong. Wear a mask. आप पिक्चर्स के टाइम पे या तो कपल को ना बेनिफिट दे दें कि कपल मास्क ना पहने, बाकी सब लोग मास्क पहने. At least give them that respect so that they can have their
Agreed.
good pictures, they can feel comfortable while you keep yourself and themselves safe. just please avoid events, please avoid gatherings. अभी ईद आ रही है, ईद पे कोशिश करें ना कोई बड़ी गैदरिंग करो. मुझे पता है majority of people will still do it anyways, but यार
We can hope. We
जब
can hope.
होता है ना, और जब बुरा वाला होता है, नहीं जब बुरा वाला कोरोना होता है ना, so I really don't want people to see the images of what it does to people. When it hits, and you shouldn't be taking those risks in life.
Agreed. Chale, on that note, thank you so much for joining in, Mushahid. It was great having you. It
Thank you as
was
well.
an amazing experience getting to talk to you and getting to know you to this level. As I've mentioned, I've been following his work for the past year. He's a brilliant photographer. I'm going to be leaving his links down below. So please do check him out. Hire him for some work, hire me for some work. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Mushahid. It was amazing getting to know you and just having this. If you would like to see Mushahid for any other episode or any specific topic, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And yeah, thank you so much for joining in, everyone. And I shall see you guys for the next episode, inshallah. Thank you so much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Again, been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again.